happening, guys? We just picked up the metal we're going to use for our gas tank cradle. Also, if you want to look at that. So it's a little under 1/8 inch, but it's 3x1 square tubing. So that should give us enough surface area to get the tank mounted up properly, and anything else we want to mount to it. We'll probably end up using those threaded rivets to mount our accessories to the outside of the cage. That way we're utilizing as much space as possible. I don't know what else to say after that.
Hi, we got a new shop. Hello guys, we're back at the A86 today. We got a lot of things to do, like measure the differential and see how it's gonna fit. We're going with the Ford 8.8 from a Ford Explorer. We're gonna go ahead and take the dimension and see how everything's gonna sit. He's gonna go over the fuel, how we're gonna set up the fuel, and how we're gonna set up the engine. So let's give it to Joshi, and then he's gonna go over the overview on that.
So while Hugo is going over the rear end and getting that all mocked up, I'm going to clean out the engine bay, get all of our unnecessary lines, brake lines, mounting brackets, all that cleaned up so we can fit our V8 in there. Along with that, we are going to be going to the trunk, cutting out the pan that's back there where the spare tire used to sit. And we're going to be building a 1-inch tube frame for the gas tank to actually sit in, so it sits lower than the flat part of the trunk area. So we can put a piece of sheet metal over that so we can still utilize our trunk space. So since we're going over that, let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get to work.
Bolts on the backside of the brake booster off there. Everything's connected to the brake pedal assembly, so that's going to come off as well. Now we can get this out of the way. Let's see how much more room we have. We're going, where'd you set that, the other one? Oh. We're going to see if we can modify going from that to this little Willwood. Obviously, we're gonna have to make a lot of modifications to make this work, but this gives us a lot more clearance in the engine bay. This will be a lot better for the car just in general, and I'm dropping bolts everywhere. But this will make it easier so we can get, once we get this in place, it'll give us a better idea of how much room we have left in the engine bay altogether to get our big block in here. Our slave cylinder was kind of hidden behind the brake booster itself, so we're gonna remove this. Tracing the line all the way back down to the slave cylinder itself. We're gonna be removing that as well because we're going to a different transmission altogether. So we'll be relocating everything as needed. But for right now, I'm gonna get this out and we'll keep going. Now we got all of our components out that we wanna get out for right now. We're gonna leave some of the brake lines until we figure out how we're gonna route those. This will just give us a roadmap of what we need. The fuel lines we didn't need, so from front all the way to the back, we removed all the ones that were down the tunnel and got rid of them all because we're gonna go to a braided line system. We got rid of a couple broken studs that broke off in here, brake booster, the slave cylinder reservoir, the slave cylinder, all the lines and electrical that were sitting up against the firewall. Now we can see when we mock this up, we can see how much we need to cut away from the firewall to accommodate for the transmission we're gonna use. All right, now Hugo's in the back looking over the rear diff, so if you guys want to go check that out.
So we finally have the diff for the E86. What's this diff? This diff, it's an 8.8 Ford that came out of a 1996 Explorer. You know, they're both solid axles, so they're both going to work, but there is a lot of differences that are going to happen between coming from here to there. So let's talk about a little of the main differences. We're gonna have to take this part of the drive shaft and shorten it so this actually sits in the middle where it should be. It already has these ears on top, which you're gonna have to cut out and put some new ones back in the thing. This also just a two-way and the lift spring, and then we're gonna convert it to a either a coilover or a spring. We haven't decided that yet. So with that being said, we're gonna have to weld some purchase right here for either the spring or the coilover. I have to cut this out, and put two more on the bottom. For my guesstimation, I think these sway bar mounts are actually gonna work. With that being said, let's get into it and then we'll figure it out as we go. Let's tear that one out and we'll see where we're at. So we got the rear diff out. It was actually a lot simpler than I thought it was gonna be. They didn't fight us as much. We didn't have as much rust, which is freaking great. All right, guys, so we'll do a little bit of zooming here in a little bit, but we're gonna talk about the main key points within frame that we have. So this is your spring purchase. This is basically where your springs sit. Which is this part right here, right? So this part just sits over here, which this sits on top of your car. This doesn't have that. This is basically just this part right here, which we're gonna have to somehow get that plate from over there into here, or just actually just manufacture one. That's one of the biggest points. Or we're gonna convert it to a coilover conversion where the shock is at. With that being said, let's strip this down, take some measurements, and then we'll see where we're at.
All right, now we're at the back side of the car. I've got some rough drafts of where I'm gonna cut out the trunk area so we can get our Evil Energy tank settled down where we want it. I'm gonna have to build a custom cage for it to hold it underneath. But also, if you wanna come over here, I can show you roughly where we're gonna cut out. So I made a rough outline of all of the panel we're actually gonna cut out. So all this is gonna get dropped out of the car. I'm gonna build a cage out of 1-inch tube steel to hold our Evil Energy tank in place and maybe some other accessories to go along with it. So they're all caged up, properly mounted, so we don't have to worry about them rolling around or coming loose or anything like that while we're driving this sucker around. So with that being said, I'm gonna get cutting this up and you guys can see it afterwards. Now that I have the hole cut out of our trunk to eliminate the spare tire well and a little bit of extra, so when I mock up the cage for Evil Energy gas tank, we'll have a little bit of room to mount other stuff that we want to mount underneath the car. We can mount them there. So Austin, if you want to come over here. There are a few things we do need to address, like this part of the frame was cut. So basically we're just gonna hammer this back a little bit and we'll take the welder and we'll just weld that back up. So not a big deal, but everything under here will be our cage. So I'm gonna make some blueprints for our cage and dimensions and get that mocked up and tacked together and see how everything fits. And then we'll get a piece of sheet metal and it'll cover this entire area so we could still utilize our trunk space and gain access to our Evil Energy gas tank. But for now, this is where I'm at. So I'm gonna go make some blueprints, take some measurements, get all that mocked up, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, we got this episode all wrapped up. Next episode, I'm gonna be cutting all the square tubing to form around the gas tank, get my cage mocked up, getting all my measurements done that I need to take care of. I got the engine bay all cleaned up, so that's taken care of. So when we do get the engine mocked up, nothing's gonna be in our way. We'll be able to run our lines, our brake lines and all that to the rear, see where we're gonna be able to mount those when the cage is installed. Hugo's gonna go over what he's gonna do next. So
I'm gonna just basically be cleaning an axle up for the next episode. That's gonna be pretty boring though. Eventually we'll get to the point that we're actually gonna set it in the ground after everything's cleaned up, and then actually see where we're gonna put it at, so that way we can start making up the brackets to mount this and make it a 4-way link, and also add the track bar on the rear. And we're gonna still deciding whether we're gonna do coils or we're gonna do actual coilovers on it. So we'll see you in the next episode for that.
you guys can help us out, like, share, and subscribe. Any comments on what we can do better, what needs to be improvement would be a great help. So we'll see you guys next time.
Autobots roll out.